Moving on, Lloyd Smith.
When we were being seated, the woman at the next table was already speaking to the man that's sitting across from her. If he thinks we've forgotten what he's done, he's wrong. Do you hear me? Wrong. Don't let him pretend that just because his brother forgave him 20 years ago, we will too. We have not, and we will not. She went on that way through our salads, through our entrees, even through our blueberry pie. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I couldn't help but think of the words that the great Persian poet Omar Khayyam wrote nearly 1,000 years ago. Never let your life become an episode on the Dr. Phil show. Well, that's what Khayyam would have said had the Persians been cursed with Dr. Phil. What he actually said was, the moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. We can't unthink our thoughts, unsay our words, or undo our actions. Time only flows in one direction. What's written is written. What's done is done. We all know that, don't we? But why is it so hard for us to act like we know that? My 50th high school class reunion is coming up this summer, and that's made me think a lot about my teenage years. Whenever I do, I think about the petty dishonesties I lived and the disappointments that caused my parents. I can recall the casual indignities all of us visited on one another. When I was 16, I decided that I was a beatnik, or at least the kind of beatnik who could live in the Spokane Valley suburbs with conservative Republican parents. Like the rest of my fellow tragically misunderstood beatniks, I was an anguished poet. I won't read you any of my anguished poetry because many of you will be eating lunch fairly soon. But you can trust me, I had buckets of anguish. I knew that all of the anguished beatnik poets smoked cigarettes because I had carefully studied their pictures in my mom's Life magazine. So at age 16, I started smoking. My mom had mom radar, and I'm pretty sure she knew that I was smoking the moment I lit my first one. But the first time she asked me directly, I lied. I lied every other time she asked me to. I even lied after I quit smoking 5 years later. Now, that seems like a small thing, doesn't it? And that's because it really was a small thing. But that's the point. As we live our lives, the petty dishonesties accumulate over the days and weeks and months and years and decades. Every time I lied to my mom, the burden that I carried the rest of my life got a tiny bit heavier. Now, I wasn't any worse than the average teenager. I know that because a few years later, the universe laughed in my face and made me a high school teacher. That gave me a quarter century to experience the arrows from the target's point of view. One day, when I was muttering with anger as a smirking kid walked away from my desk after making a snide remark, another student, wise beyond his years, who was standing next to me, leaned over and said, "You know, Mr. Smith, you're in a marathon. You're never going to finish if you get mad every time you step in some dog crap on the road." Now there's teenage poetry for you, although not nearly as anguished as my own had been. But he was right. As you go through your life, you can't pick up more burdens to carry. Carrying them wastes your energy. It consumes your time. It depletes your spirit. As the moving finger wrote the story of my adult years as a teacher, I came to realize that the remarks some of the kids were making were so faint and so insubstantial that they were weightless, and those pages fluttered away in the breeze. As the moving finger wrote down the lies that I was telling my mom, she eventually took those pages to carry for herself. After all, she was my mom. And that woman in the restaurant, for 20 years, the moving finger has been writing her resentment and anger in heavy black print. If she doesn't find a way to put those pages down, they will crush her. The moving finger has already written all of the stories of our lives so far, and it has moved on. Are you moving on, or will we see Dr. Phil dissect your life on his TV show someday? Move on. What's written is written. What's done is done. And Mr. Toastmaster, so am I.